Good morning and welcome to Namaste Today, a soulful way to begin your day. I'm your heartfelt host and the Sensei to serious joy, Christopher Witecki. This audio blogcast is for Friday. Thank Goddess it's Friday. Friday, May 19, 2017. Thank Goddess it's the end of the week. Namaste. Well, friends, it's not just the end of the week, but this weekend is the end of the Taurus transit. That means you are putting on your final touches to your manifestations and will be tested on that in the next 24 hours. In your zodiac weather, I'll talk you through the planets and give you a forecast for the weekend. And later in our tea time, since we're putting the final touches on our new manifestations, I thought I would discuss the art of balance. But first, let's take a look at today's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather is for Friday, May 19, 2017. And my global prediction for planet Gaia is sunny and anxious today. Step 29 will test your creations, and the moon in Pisces makes everyone sensitive. Let's take a look at the planets. It's been a busy week of us dancing on our feet, but this weekend we slide into home base, my friend. As you wake up today on Friday, step 28, I manifest, rules the day. This is the Grand Master step of Taurus, and you have been basically birthing or planting your magical beings. I talked about this in yesterday's show. You may feel very quiet. It may be a very blissful morning, frankly, just like you're holding a brand new baby. And then somewhere along the day, step 29 will take over. At that point, the energy will shift and you may have a tendency to feel a little anxiety. That's the combined effect of step 29 and the moon in Pisces. First of all, step 29 itself is the tested degree. It's always the final degree that's tested. And so, in plain simple terms, this means aspects of your plans or ideas or production or whatever child or magic beings you are giving birth to and setting in a certain direction, something may go wrong. Something may not go according to plan. This is really the universe showing you what is not set up correctly in your plans. It doesn't mean your plans won't happen, but it does mean that you have to think on your feet for yet another day. The 2 is I feel, and the 9 is I act, I am. So this is basically the degree where emotions and ego work side by side. Some people do flip out because emotions will trigger their ego or their ego will trigger their emotions. And in yourself, you will feel the same sort of energy. What you want to do is take that energy and move it forward, okay? Use this aggressive energy to move forward with your project, move forward with your goals, carry out the things you can carry out. As I say to my Serious Joy subscribers, pick the low-hanging fruit today. At least you will feel a job well done, and that energy will have a constructive outlet. Now, the moon is in Pisces today, and it basically begins in the low degrees as we wake up and climbs through the scale. What that means is we emotionally go through all the degrees of Pisces, particularly the lower degrees, which is guilt, feeling bad about the past, allowing things from our past to kind of haunt us. And so with this emotion triggering ego thing going on with step 29, you can easily derail yourself from things that are absolutely not relevant, okay? So if you feel yourself starting to go down an old path, do not allow yourself to judge, pull yourself out of that, and use that sensitivity to navigate what you're doing. That's really what I think the Pisces energy is here for, is for us to sense things that we can't see. This is literally our instincts, our ability to sense something in the woods. So take that sensitivity and sense the things you need. Don't be oversensitive. So Friday night, step 29 rules the day, and into Saturday morning, we also wake with step 29. This energetic kind of frantic energy that needs an outlet will probably continue through the night. Be careful out there, folks. This is a degree where things go wrong, so please be careful with your lives. As we wake up on Saturday, it's going to be an interesting two-part day because you wake up with all this frantic energy, and then later in the day, we go to step 0, Gemini, at which point I think everyone will turn into an official zombie. Not zombie as in going around eating flesh, okay, but zombie as in staring off into space and we don't even know what we're thinking about or what was said last. That sort of zombieing out. That's step 0 Gemini. And that actually happens from Saturday into Sunday morning. So Saturday night will be a very, very quiet night. With the moon in Pisces, it also means psychic energy will be very high. And because it's a step 0 day, this is a vortex day between life and death. So again, be very careful. But also for those who are empaths who channel, you're going to find you are incredibly psychic on Saturday night. Then on Sunday, we will finally click to step 1 later in the afternoon, at which point you'll start to come to your senses and feel like, okay, I think I can survive. I don't know what that cloud was about. So it's kind of a vortex weekend. And indeed, it really is. For one reason, it's a vortex weekend because of the Venus-Jupiter opposition. They are coming to a head this weekend, and this is the opposition of the part of you putting out a new character and a new strength opposed to a part of you that is trying to find what's fair and what your equal is here on Earth. So that balance between ego and what is fair kind of comes to some sort of a turning point. That story turns. We're in the next chapter of that story by the time we hit on Monday. And at that point, Venus and Jupiter will be out of alignment and we will have made a transformation. I'll talk more about that in the tea time. The other interesting aspect that starts on Friday is Saturn now is trining, Uranus at 26 degrees in Aries, Saturn at 26 degrees retrograde in Sagittarius. They come to a direct harmonic of step 26. They've been in trine this entire time, but the point is as we exit out of Taurus energy, as we exit out of this I manifest consciousness and move into Gemini, suddenly things in our neural network really will begin to speed up. And we're going to find that life really just goes ahead, like skyrockets ahead, mostly because a lot of our life will be in our heads. The Sun and Mars will both be in Gemini. And so having gotten past this major planting season, our minds will race ahead. Having gotten past this issue of what's fair and what direction should our ego take, now we have some answers. Our mind can rush ahead. And now that Saturn is trining Uranus, we are clear, step 26, we are deciding who we are next and what we want to develop next, Uranus. And that means we understand what our story is and can make some decisions about our life, Saturn at step 26. So this weekend is kind of the last cloudy, take it easy weekend. From this point forward, things do rocket ahead because you have this idea of who you are more settled. You have this idea of what your next chapter in your story is more settled. And with the moon crossing through Pisces, you probably let go of a lot of emotional, spiritual baggage this weekend too. That's part of what the step 0 and the moon in Pisces is. It is you mourning the past. In other words, saying, I want to let it go. I'm done with it. If you've withheld any emotions or tied up baggage with this, it might release over the weekend because frankly, where you're going, this sort of baggage isn't allowed on that bullet train. So it's a transformative and powerful weekend, and we're putting the last touches on our sense of balance. And with Venus opposing Jupiter, we are also redefining what balance is. And with that said, I bring you our tea time topic. Go steep yourself some tea, and let's have our weekend tea time. Hello, my friend, and welcome to our tea time. Today's tea time topic is the art of balance. As you move forward in your story, the time has once again come to redefine what balance is to you. It is time for us to rebalance our lives, to reharmonize our lives, and bring them to a sense of inner peace. That's what balance will give you, is peace. Peace and balance go together in the universe. And that's something that's important for you to understand, that peace itself comes from balance, just like beauty comes from balance. It turns out when we find things beautiful and we measure them scientifically, it's a very balanced scene. And that's what we find as beautiful, is the more balanced features, the more balanced colors, when nothing really takes over the scene, but rather we're in some sort of visual harmony. As it turns out, in my study of astrology, numerology, sacred geometry, and my discovery of the 11 steps to serious joy, the universe has very clearly communicated in all these mediums, okay, of understanding and wisdom, what balance is. It turns out that there is a balance between our own human consciousness that can be achieved. And this balance of human consciousness is really told extremely simply in astrological charts. If you've ever had your natal chart read or understand anything about basic astrology, there are 12 houses. And the division of the houses ends up with one house is always what we say opposing another house. So there are always two houses that balance one another in a chart, and this is what we call the wheel. Now, people often ask me, Chris, what's the goal in astrology? I really feel that over lifetimes, our goal is to balance the energy in our chart. It is to find and balance and harmonize our own energy inside of us, which means that if you look at the wheel or look at your planets lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, if the soul has been getting really good at this earth trick, you'll find that their planets are spread around the wheel, or at least are in balance. The litmus test for this to me is if you took a chart and you ran it around on the ground, is it going to run evenly, or is it going to be lopsided and go pidalump, pidalump, pidalump? You know what I'm saying? So there is an art of balance, says astrology, and I think this is true. In my study of the 11 steps in numerology, I find this balance to be true. And these houses represent parts of our human consciousness or states of our awareness, or in my system or method, they represent one of the 11 steps, actually 12. There's a hidden step. So today I thought I would go around the clock and give you just a little introduction idea of what balance is, so you can think through this in your own life and ask yourself, are these things truly balanced in my life? And I'll give the astrological citations as I go. Let's start first with the first house, ego. So the first house in astrology is ego, and it is opposed by the seventh house, which is our ability to receive and be in relationships, okay, to open up to another, step 6, versus step 9, to act. And what this means in human consciousness, what God is saying here in the planets is that in our human being consciousness, our ego is on one side of the spectrum and our relationships are on the other. All right? And that we are to balance our ego with our relationships. Now, we all know a lot of people do not have a balanced ego in their relationships, right? In fact, the interesting thing about this system of astrology, it basically says these two sides are on opposite sides of the fence. In other words, your ego, the first house, has no business in your relationships, the seventh house. Ego's over here to the left. Relationships is over here to the right. Ego has no place in relationships. So if you're having problems in relationships, hey, is your ego there? Because it doesn't even belong there. Your ego belongs outside when you're doing things outside. Now, the other interesting thing, which I find also kind of titillating because I have the sun in the 10th house, is when it comes to your ego and going out there and building and doing and taking action, your relationships have no business in that. And that's something I've learned, that, we're meant to leave our long-term relationships out of the things when our ego's involved. They're not supposed to be involved. In other words, wife's supposed to stay at home. Not all the time, you know what I mean? But like, I'm not supposed to try to please my relationships when I'm out doing ego stuff. I have to go do ego stuff for ego stuff and relationship stuff for relationship stuff, and these two must remain balanced. The other thing I'll point out with this opposition real quick, lastly, actually, has to do with the idea of giving and receiving, okay? The first house is giving. The seventh house, our house of relationships, that's receiving. That means that there's times to give in life, and there's times to receive in life. And the two don't happen at the same time, all right? Ego and receiving are separated. So when we're giving someone a present, we're not meant to receive anything at that point. So we should only be giving at Christmas, not expecting to receive at all, I guess is what I'm saying, right? And when it comes to receiving, you're not supposed to jump up and say thank you. That's a giving thing. You're supposed to sit down and receive the gift. In fact, a lot of people who are super giving always complain that no one gives to them. And it's really because they insist on staying in the giving side of things. They probably never balance it out with receiving. In your own life, you must balance your giving with your receiving from yourself and to others. You should be receiving in your life as much as you're giving in your life. And this is the art of the 1st and the 7th house. The next opposition is the 2nd to the 8th house, and this is our ability to manifest is on one side, and the 8th house is our ability to cut things off and protect. So the universe is saying basically that when we are investing in manifestation and we are building things, we are not to be closed down. We are not to be putting boundaries around it. We're giving it unlimited light and love, and it's not to be shut down in any way. So when we manifest, there are no boundaries in the process of creation and manifestation. No boundaries. However, opposing that are boundaries, and where we draw boundaries. And a lot of times, this is what I've been really teaching step 0 in the boundary making. A lot of people want to manifest in the 2nd house and create all sorts of value in the 2nd house, but they're doing nothing but trying to create value. No other side of them is cutting things away. No other side of them is putting up walls. No other side of them is drawing a line of when things stop. And so, although they're trying to be abundant, they're doing it without boundaries, the opposite consciousness, and so they never really get anywhere and become abundant. They just produce and run out, produce and run out, produce and run out. That is an 8th house boundary issue. So we must balance our values with the line, that there is a line to everything, that there is a boundary to everything. And by honoring the boundary on the other side, we actually end up valuing things more. In fact, boundaries lead into the value of things. If it has a high price tag, that's a high boundary. That makes it a high value. So boundaries and values work together, and they must balance each other. You must spend as much time and space, which is what boundaries are. You must take time and space for everything before you actually go and produce it. There must be time and space taken out for everything before you try to produce. And that's another thing. People run to produce without time and space beforehand to set everything up, and they can't manifest. The next opposition is the 3rd house versus the 9th house, which is basically our thoughts versus our experience. And this is really wise if you think about this, that the universe is calling for us to balance our thoughts with our knowledge and experience, the 9th house, Sagittarius, okay, which is I believe, step 3. And we tend to, this is where humans really, really get out of balance a lot of times because they live all of their thoughts, thoughts. And I often say to my clients, like, but what has your experience been? Has God let you down? Have you ever been let down? Did it ever go bad? Has it ever been like what it is you're thinking is horrible? And the answer is maybe sometimes, but usually no. So to keep our mind in check, consciousness says it must be balanced with our experience and our knowledge, which means sometimes our experience and knowledge is the path. Sometimes our thoughts on the other side will add to our experience and knowledge or give us a bridge out of what we've experienced before. But it is our experience, knowledge, education, even travel. I mean, that's why I use the word experience, because it's really what have you actually done? What is your soul resume on Earth? Which is why I believe the Galactic Center is in Sagittarius, the consciousness of our experience and journey, because that's what we're here to do, is have this experience. So thoughts will help us out of our experience, and at the same time, our experience will help us out of our mind. There must be a balance. You must give enough time and space to each side to really balance your intellect, really is what these two add up to. The next is the 4th house and the 10th house, which is our emotions and our career and our direction, the direction we take. And this is very interesting too, because this says, again, home and career should be separated. Something I realized when I started working from home, I'm like, ooh, I am violating the balance of life here. Because really you have to have a separate emotional foundation from the career future you take. It also says that one depends on the other. To be able to go with your direction and make your decisions in the 10th house and carve out your career, you got to go over to the 4th house and check your feelings and see if your feelings feel that this works good for you. And that's one thing I learned the hard way too by having what we call an empty fourth house in my chart. Like, oh, we have to check our feelings before I go in my 10th house career building, and these two must go together. The other interesting thing about this and the balance of decision making against feelings, which is step 8 against step 2, is that a lot of times we get caught in our feelings like, oh, this is bad, it's never going to get better, I don't know, things are going to happen. And universe says the opposite of balancing our feelings is a decision, which means if you're caught in a lot of emotional storm, the astrology says make a decision, a commitment, a dedication. A decision is an incision in consciousness. You have to consciously put your foot down, says this, and that will take you out of the emotion. So emotions can affect a decision. A decision can help you out of your emotions. This is the art of balance between the two, and the art of balance between Capricorn and Cancer. The next is the 5th house versus the 11th house, which is our heart and the world. In fact, the 5th house I really think of as our heart, our love for ourself. That's the truth. The 5th house gets associated with children. It gets associated with falling in love. It gets associated with creative expression and music and all these different things. But what it all boils down to is the heart, your heart enjoying and loving life, period, which is really self-love. That's just a self-love fest. People fall in love because it feels great to be in love. It's not so much that they're in it for the other person as they love the feeling of being loved. It's very selfish, right? Like, I love this feeling. It's just for me. So the 5th house is our love for ourselves. The 11th house is society. It's others in the world. And this is very, very fascinating, particularly for those people who are lost in their journey. It's like, on one side, you have your love for yourself. On the other side, you have the things you love in the world, okay? The things that you love in the world, which means loving yourself has nothing to do with how the world loves you. Those are on different sides of the spectrum, the 5th and the 11th house. They are different sides of the consciousness. Each balance the other. So our love for things in the world is a lot of times what we are obsessed with. So I see a lot of people actually really focused on the 11th, like, oh, I need things in the world. I need the car. I need the wife. I need this. I need that. I need all these 11th house expressions of my heart. And they haven't looked back to their 5th house to see it's empty. They need love for themselves. They need to love themselves and be there for themselves. But this is also the same story. You can flip it around where you see that person who's super successful in the world and you look in their eyes and they look loveless. They look like they're not having fun at all being on top of the world. And that's because they have made it to the 11th house, but they've still ignored the 5th house. Then the flip side of that, you can flip it around. It's like you have that creative artist, that person who's an artist, who's amazingly creative, that musician, that person who lives in the 5th house. They love being them. And you go, what have you done this week? And that person hasn't gone out of the house or done anything. They haven't been in the 11th house at all. You know what I mean? So basically what this says is we all need to balance love with ourselves and love being ourselves with the time we put in the world. Equal time in the world is equal time with yourself is what that art of balance is. And I see people really losing that one a lot. And then lastly, and I'll let you on your way, has to do with the balance between reality and faith. That's the 6th house and the 12th house in classic astrology. And this is one that really opened my eyes as well as far as understanding is concerned. Of course, most people are thinking mostly of reality. They live in the 6th house. They live in their body, in their pain, in their moment to moment. That's where all their attention is, putting all of it on reality and what they see in reality, and no attention on the other side, which is the 12th house, our spiritual faith. And this tells us that it is faith versus reality. This what has always been sort of a one or the other in classic storytelling. This actually is the art of balance of being a human being. You must balance your reality with faith. And that means, you can see the examples both ways. The person who is just like freaking out at every little detail and can't handle reality, that person, the only way out of that horrible experience is to have faith. They have no choice but to have faith and connect to this sense, an inner sense of peace in themselves in order to be able to fly above all the porcupine spikes of reality. That's the only way to detach and get out of the situation. On the flip side, you have people who are, basically living in trees and completely disconnected from reality, and they don't have a job and they don't know what's going on, and they basically, wake up at 11 a.m. and go to bed at 4 a.m. Like, they are just completely in their own time zone and completely disconnected, and they just can't seem to get anywhere. And that is a 12th house position. And ultimately, what will get them out of the 12th house? A job, some reality. Right? In your own self, this is also the art of personal balance that you must spend. And I think for most of people, we live in still reality and we forget to go to our faith. We forget to go to, well, do I sense something bad happening? Do I sense a bad guy around the corner? Does my spirit, is that my story? Is that what I was born to live? What's my faith? And you have to stick with that faith to get past the reality in that case. Well, friend, I hope that you learn the art of balance in your life. And I say that because things may suddenly get wacky any minute here, and you'll want to know how to hold it together. It's been a pleasure serving you. I hope you have a fabulous weekend. I'll see you back on Monday with more. Until then, remember, I love you, and live, love, be.
Live, love, be.